Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Vila Bianca.
I'm Eric Murphy.
This is Skeptic Generation.
And we need to talk.
Hello, Eric.
Hey, V. How's
I'm
it going?
back.
Yeah, long time no see. I guess for the show, for the fans, it's been 2 weeks.
Yeah, how was last week?
I think it was really fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I missed you, obviously, but I feel like we did well. People were patient with me, which is good. And I don't know. It was nice to know that I could do it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But how have you been?
Good. I've been good. We've got a couple of announcements to get into before the show today.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So a couple things. First, hello everybody. I missed you. I'm happy to be back. We are going to be, if you guys were here this past week, I don't know if everybody has seen it. We did an impromptu live stream on Wednesday night where we reviewed Eric's interview with ex-vampire, ex-Illuminati, ex-druid high priest person.
Yeah, that was funky.
It was a lot of fun though. And people are asking, can we do that more often? Eric, what's required for us to do that more often? Because I also enjoyed it.
More of those conversations. So this really isn't the format for it on this channel because we do call-in shows. But if there are channels that want to facilitate discussions between myself and those kinds of people, or you and those kinds of people, they just need to set it up.
Yeah.
As far as the discussions go, I don't know how I feel. I'm actually a little hesitant to do debates. I'll do discussions, but debates are something that I kind of save for the stage physically. Mm-hmm. But it was a lot of fun. And for people who don't know, we actually did it. We did that stream on our anniversary.
Yeah.
I don't think we were thinking about it when we scheduled it, but we spent 3 hours and it was genuinely really, really nice.
It was a lot of fun. So if you haven't checked it out yet, it is linked on our channel page. You can find that very easily. The one thing I am going to say is that it's going to disappear for everyone who is not a patron on the 22nd. So that's on Wednesday. So on Wednesday of next week. So it's up for a week. We want everyone to get a chance to see it. And then we're going to unlist it and make it available to patrons only. So if you are not going to get to see it until after Wednesday, consider becoming a patron. It's everybody gets it no matter what your pledge level is. And that's just going to be how things work. That way patrons kind of get access to a library, but everyone kind of gets to participate. If you're interested in our Patreon, supporting us, Christmas is coming up. We've got a couple of people asking about how they can help out. So the wish list is up there for any studio equipment. We did get green screens from David Hayden. David, thank you so much.
Thank you, David.
That was really, really thoughtful.
Yeah.
And then I also did want to get out there our P.O. Box address as well, just because I've gotten like 5 or 6 different people reaching out to me being like, you need your P.O. Box places because we don't have it.
I don't have a screen for that.
No, but it will be linked in the description, and we'll make sure it's places as well because it's unfair to, have you guys have to reach out and ask for it. A couple other things. We are going to be live the day after Christmas. So the Sunday after Christmas, we are going to be here. We're very excited about that. We're not taking any kind of break. We're not doing any kind of pre-recorded thing. We're going to be here with you guys, spending time with you. So if you are at a family's house, or if you're not able to get to spend time with family this year, either because of Omicron variant coming up or, whatever, we are going to be here. So feel free to come hang out with us the day after Christmas.
Yeah, we'd love that.
And then finally, kind of along that same line, I did get a message from a friend and a viewer who says that purple, I'm looking over here because this is where our whiteboard is, where I keep all my notes, so that's why. Purple Rhymes with Orange is a smaller channel that is linked in our description, so definitely go check them out. She is going to be putting together a live stream for 48-hour marathon for people with depression, people who during this time of year might not be feeling so good, might be feeling lonely. So the live stream link is not up yet. It's going to be posted, but go check out her channel and pay her visits. Tell her we say hi. And if you are feeling lonely this time of year, that's definitely something you should check out.
Definitely. We want people to be able to have a place to go in community. It's damn important to us.
Absolutely. All right, enough prelude for right now. Let's jump in. Let's start with Kit, actually.
Kit. Oh, Kit. I didn't see Kit. I apologize. Let me get Kit in the
Hi,
thing.
Kit.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Kit.
Hi. This will be real quick and simple. I'm just a long time fan. I'm elder millennial, I'm 40, queer, poly, whole 9 yards. And I just want to say it's great to follow you guys over the last, I don't know how many years between here and ACA, and I've just watched like everything, just never got around to playing it.
Aw, that's awesome.
Long-time atheist in southern Idaho nonetheless, so, grew up around a lot of Mormons and everything else in small-town Idaho. I just want to say thanks for doing a good job and being representative of what's actually, our particular chunk of the generations out there.
Oh, thank you.
It's really cool, and I missed your guys' transition from ACA over to Skeptic Generation. I was like, oh, they left. That sucks. And then I found Skeptic Generation.
It happened very fast.
Oh, shit.
It was rather abrupt.
So,
well, we're so glad that you found us.
Thanks. You guys are kicking ass. Yeah. And
Yay.
actually, I'll be honest, I haven't really watched Talk Heathen since I found you guys over here. I was a big fan of both of you. You're both calm and chill and, queer. Now it turns out you're poly. It was like, okay, these are my peeps.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. That was it. Nothing crazy than that. Just keep up a kick-ass job, and we all appreciate it out here, I'm sure. At least I know I do.
Thank you so much, Kit.
That is a wonderful way to start the episode.
Yeah.
Aw, that's really sweet.
Appreciate you. Okay.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Have a happy holiday.
Take care. Happy holidays. Whatever else you do, you have fun and keep up the good work.
Thank you. Aw.
That was really sweet.
That was really cute.
I liked that. Aw.
Yay. Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're always very excited when people find us because it was very sudden and we didn't get to say goodbye. And so we really, really are happy when people find us and are like, oh my gosh. Yeah. Somebody left a comment on like our second episode and was like, wow, I was expecting more callers, more theist callers.
On the first two episodes when nobody had any idea that we were around and like we were calling our friends being like, hey you guys,
can you call in please?
Could you wish us good luck maybe?
Yeah. Come a long way in 6 months.
We really have.
All right. I'm curious to talk to Wingo in Illinois.
Ooh, let me grab Wingo.
Wingo, nice name. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate it. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
Really well.
Happy to hear from you. What's your question today?
Well, I was hoping to breach the topic of free will. And
Perfect.
Basically,
yay.
I've heard a little bit about your guys' takes on it, about like determinism, but I was hoping to hear what your guys' definition of free will is and just kind of take it from there.
Interesting. I like it. All right. So, free will can mean many things, and I think that there's a popular concept of what we mean when we say free will in like general conversation, and then there are like different levels and categories of free will in terms of like philosophical discussion. So usually what I mean when I say free will in like a colloquial sense is this idea that we have complete agency over our choices and we are able to influence the world outside of any kind of determining factors. So that would kind of be like libertarian free will, this concept of...
That's the colloquial view of it, is that, libertarian free will.
Mm-hmm. And just this idea that, hey, if I gave you a choice between chocolate ice cream and vanilla ice cream, you could freely, without any kind of biological or physical or any kind of manipulation, I guess.
Mechanism
Yeah.
associated.
Choose one or the other. And then if I were to give you the same choice again, erase your memory, you could choose a different thing. So that's kind of what I mean when I talk about free will and why I'm a little bit hesitant to endorse the idea. Eric, how about you?
I'm very, very similar. I would love to be able to kind of talk to Wingo about it as well, but I want to give Wingo the chance to kind of respond to you first, because I feel like if we went back to back, that might prevent them from engaging.
Absolutely. Wingo, what are your thoughts about free will? How do you define it?
Well, it's my belief that as individuals, we don't actually have free will, as I would define it, which would be, the ability to, like you said, affect your environment, but in almost unlimited ways, like imposing your will upon your environment. I don't believe like individuals have the power to do that.
Interesting.
So to speak.
Are you a Calvinist?
I don't know what that is. I'm
So,
sorry, dude.
No, you're good. I'm super curious because it says in our notes that you are a theist. Is that correct?
Well, I don't like follow any religion. Like I was
Okay.
raised Catholic, but I don't. I don't
Cool.
like belong to any religion.
That makes a little bit more sense because usually the intersection between people who believe in a God and are religious and people who believe in free will, at least in the US, is they're kind of the same a lot of the time. So I was super curious to hear that. I would tend to agree with you on that. I don't think that as we define it in terms of libertarian free will, it exists. And there have been a myriad of studies and research done to kind of throw doubt on that. Why do you think this matters? Why is this a topic you're calling in about? I mean, I love talking about it, but let's get to the meat of this.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, basically, I think that there's an important distinction between like what we would call, like you said, like the freedom of choice. With the ice cream example, I heard somebody the other day say that basically it's not up to you whether you like chocolate or vanilla. You just do. You know what I mean? Like it's not, it's just like a chemical thing, basically. Like it's your chemistry, like your. A lot of the choices that we try to make are definitely like hijacked by our reptilian brain or like just our impulses. You know what I mean? So even as a matter of having the freedom of choice, we're still limited by our physiology.
Okay.
I think that what got me down this little, rabbit hole or whatnot was Sam Harris made this comment about 80% of who we are today is due to like who we are as in our genetics.
Yeah.
And 20% is due to environment.
Those are interesting
But I, like,
statistics.
completely-
I'm not sure where those
Well,
particular
I know,
percentages
it's just
come
an
from,
example.
but
I'm just,
yeah.
I'm just paraphrasing. But in my opinion, like I think it's completely reverse. Like honestly, because you take like Michael Jordan, right? 6-time world champ. He's one of the greatest athletes of all time. And say Michael Jordan
Wingo?
grew up in Zamunda. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I do want to make sure that we're engaging in a dialogue here, just because that's the most interesting thing for the
sorry.
viewers.
Yeah,
So,
I just want to make an example, kind of like with the, you know what I mean? Like, because it comes back to the ice cream example, pretty much.
right.
But,
You can't. So I guess my
sorry,
question is, do you feel like the way that you see free will, and if it in fact is not accurate how society defines it, do you think that would impact things like God belief?
Well, I don't necessarily like have an opinion on whether it would affect God belief or not, but I believe that if we looked at ourselves as a species and as individuals, and we took the idea of free will and took it from the perspective of a species as opposed to individuals, we would be able to like impose our will. Say, okay, I'm just trying to come up with examples to explain like what I'm thinking. Say like flight, like you can you fly? You can't fly, right? As a human being, you can't fly.
And so we don't have that.
Mankind can fly. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
you
but
get a plane ticket, you can fly.
Interesting.
I guess the problem there is when it starts getting that broad, we start falling into kind of fallacious patterns. And so I would be careful on that one. The example there is there's the fallacy of division and composition that one jumps into. So humanity, quote unquote, can fly, right? But that doesn't mean an individual can fly, right? If you're talking about that's the fallacy of division. And so we've got to really be careful about how we're defining. Most of it is just semantics, but if we're not careful about how we're defining it, we can start getting into some really, really weird spaces. You know what I mean?
Can you give me an example of one of those weird spaces? I'm sorry.
Sure. No worries. So let me think. I want to give you something absurd, right? Let's say I am looking at a car. I say that is a car. I remove a piece from the car, maybe the steering wheel or the seat. And can I look at either of those individual pieces and say that is also a car?
Okay.
Right?
Okay. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And the other side of it is looking at individual pieces and saying that what is true of the individual pieces is true of the whole. So you're baking a cake. You can look at flour and go, flour is white, soft, and fluffy. Does that also mean that the cake is white and soft and fluffy? No. Because when you put the individual pieces together, it creates something new, and that new thing does not necessarily have the properties of what those individual pieces have. And so when we're talking about something, especially as nebulous as free will, I'd definitely be careful to not equate the whole with the parts, because then you fall into those fallacies of division and
composition.
Thank you, V.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are really interesting examples about ways it can go wrong. But, basically the conclusion of what I've kind of just, my thoughts about our species is, like I was saying, mankind can fly, even though individuals can't fly. It is like we are the only species on planet Earth that has ever existed that has actual free will, because I believe that we are able to go beyond the limitations of what our planet has given us. We can basically outlive our planet. We actually have the option to outlive our planet, really. We can expand to other parts of the universe.
So that's
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, that's an interesting definition of free will that I think would be useful to unpack a little bit. So we agree that the free choice aspect might not be accurate the way we think about it, but you're defining free will more as the ability to conquer one's environment or biology. Interesting.
Making things possible that shouldn't be possible.
That's a really interesting concept, because
I've never heard of free will being defined that way.
Me neither, but I kind of like it. It to me, it feels very much like a redefinition in the way that Dennett redefines free will to mean decisions you've made without external stimuli and manipulation or whatever. Mm-hmm. If I'm not holding a gun to your head, then the choices you make are technically free in the way that Dennett describes it, even if biologically on a molecular level they're not. And I feel like, Wingo, you're kind of doing the same thing, where you're like, okay, granting free will in the way that libertarians might believe is not accurate. What if we said that free will was this thing, this ability to transcend our physical kind of natural limitations, which is very interesting. And I'm going to have to chew on that some more.
I don't know. I think I might create, or I might try and use different language, because I think it might get confusing for me if I used those specific words. I don't know. I think I would need to get past some of my own preconceptions in order to do that. But it seems like that's kind of foregoing a discussion that's usually reserved for the ghost in the machine. The arguments about whether or not there is a soul.
Right.
Instead, it's talking about a kind of a meta-analysis of the limitations of our species.
Yeah, which is interesting. I would read a paper on it. Wingo, thank you for your thoughts here. That was actually a really interesting take.
Yeah.
All right, I appreciate it. Sorry, it's a little sloppy, but I appreciate you guys definitely. You guys
No, we got there.
Yeah.
Very great job. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care,
Thanks for
Wingo.
calling
Thank
in.
you. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if free will, at least in the way that I've used the word my entire life, could, I don't know. It just seems like a new full definition, not like
and that's
definition 1, 2, like it would.
right. And honestly, that to me is the interesting and also the infuriating part of the free will discussion, which is Wingo did exactly what philosophers do with the term free will. They say, okay, well, that doesn't exist, but let's redefine it so we can still pretend we have it. And I feel like that's what Dennett did. That's what Sam Harris does. Like, people do this where they're like, okay, well, we want this term in use. We want to be able to say, I have free will. Well, what does that mean? We understand now that our previous conceptions of what free will is are wrong. So how do we redefine it in a way to keep it applicable? And I mean, that's very interesting. And as a descriptivist, I'm like, yeah, let's play with a word and see if we can make it mean new and useful things.
Yeah, I'm a little more hesitant.
Yeah, the only concept there that I would push on is like, okay, well, I'm all about redefining something and adding definitions if it's useful. Where is that useful? Like, where in the conversation would that come into play as a useful concept? And
I guess for me, it's more, I don't know. I think that when it comes to like having a channel like this, being a communicator, if someone were to tune in right now and hear me go, oh yeah, I believe in free will, and didn't get all of the context, and people get taken out of context, that could be used to, prop up an endorsement of libertarian free will that we already set aside at the very beginning of the conversation.
And this, I think, is our fundamental difference in how we approach philosophy overall. And we might do a live stream on that. I feel like that would be a fun debate to have.
Where we can just argue with each other about.
Yeah. Would you watch us just argue with each other about philosophy for a couple hours over drinks?
Because we do that all of the time.
We will do that.
In our off time.
Absolutely. So let us know. Also, thank you everybody who's sending in super chats. If you would like to ask us a question or have us read something for you on air, and you don't want to call in, which is understandable, you can leave it as a super chat. We always read them out at the end of the episode.
We do reserve the right not to read all of them if it's some kind of bigoted, hateful, weird thing.
Yeah, in that case, we'll just take your money and ignore you. All right, let's talk with Sunny in Indiana.
All right.
Sunny, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, guys. And by the way, I would absolutely listen to you guys talk philosophy. I'm down for that.
Nice. All right, what can we help you with today?
All right, well, I mentioned before, and we talked about VR, and I mentioned that I have a grandmother who's a theist who's having a hard time grappling with the concept of VR, is good or bad. All right, so this is about her, and I want to preface this by saying that she is the best person in the world. I will fight anybody who says otherwise. And I don't want to direct any sort of condescension towards her, so I just would like to ask everybody. I know that you two aren't going to have a problem with this, but just people in general.
I get it.
Be, respectful towards my grandma, because I love her and I will fight you. But, so the issue here is, so she is an evangelical Christian, hardcore, and she is horribly worried about my eternal soul.
Yeah,
because I am not. And usually whenever we get together, we'll spend, hours hanging out. We went fishing in VR a couple of days ago and had a really wonderful time.
Oh, yay!
But yeah, it was great. But she always tends to draw the conversation towards trying to convert me to Christianity. And she's really polite about it. She's kind, she's thoughtful, but it always goes to that. And I feel bad for her because I really do not believe. I've tried. I can't.
Yeah.
I just can't wrap my brain around it. And she'll sit there and try to talk me into it, and I feel like it's just a one-sided conversation for her because I respect her and I love her, and we've had a serious argument over it before, and I just felt awful afterwards.
Yeah.
So I've stopped trying to argue my point so strongly, and usually I'll just sit there and listen to what she's saying and nod and smile and acknowledge when things are interesting and hard to explain.
Yeah.
And then just let that go. But I feel like she's just sitting there feeling awkward, waiting for me to come around, and I'm just not going to.
I feel you.
I don't know what to say to her. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel terrible about it.
I've got a
Don't
grandmother
advice.
exactly like that, honestly. Best, most generous, kind person in the world. Obviously, we can have a duel, Sunny, if we need to, about whose grandmother is actually the best person in the world. But
all right, I got my fisticuffs up.
So
Pistols at dawn. I will be your second V.
oh my gosh. Yeah, she will send me cards regularly, and they're very sweet, and they are the nicest things to get, except that in them is always this deep-rooted fear that when she passes away, she is never going to get to see me again because I'm not going to be in heaven with her. And this is a thing that is really heartbreaking to experience on both ends, right? This is two people who care about each other. And on the one end, she's worried about my eternal soul that she truly and deeply believes is a thing. And I'm worried about her right now feeling bad about worrying about my soul. So
That's exactly where I'm at.
Yeah. So the things that I've done so far that seem to have at least kind of pulled back the amount of conversation that is happening is I will engage, and what I've said is, she's like, I just don't want to see you go to hell. And I've said, hey, Grandma, listen, you believe that God is all loving, right? And she says, yes. And I say, well, I honestly want to know if God exists. And I'm being 100% honest in where I am in that journey, and that I am not convinced. And do you think that an all-loving, all-good God would punish somebody? Yeah, exactly.
Yes, exactly.
And it kind of stops the conversation. At least it has in my experience. She's been like, well, yeah, anyway, this other thing. So I think meeting her where she's at and giving her those moments of maybe a little bit of cognitive dissonance, maybe just a little bit of that, hey, I understand where you're coming from. This isn't me not getting it. This is me being honest about where I am, has helped me. And I'm glad to hear that you've been kind of employing a similar thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, though, honestly, the way that I see it with people who are honestly good people who you want to maintain relationships with, and this is just a thing that they like to talk about, is I have my little brother is super into Marvel, you know, and he will lock me down and talk to me about Marvel stuff. And it's I get it. I've seen some of the movies. I haven't read the comics, but like I know what he's talking about, and I can engage on that level, but I'm not going to become a super fan, right? And so just kind of treating it as like her fandom and being like, you really want to share your excited fandom with me, and I'm going to listen and engage and maybe push back a little bit where appropriate, and then I'm going to move on with my life.
That's exactly what I've been doing. It's great.
I have a different approach.
Okay, here we go.
I'm eager to listen to this.
Well, it is not as fun.
It is not as fun.
Well, I'm hanging up.
Well, so I think that is very, very useful. And I would actually preface those conversations with your grandma by saying, oh, what?
Can we raise Sunny's volume a little bit?
Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
I apologize, Sonny. I am going to raise your volume up.
I'll refrain from yelling into the microphone.
No worries. Actually, being a little bit louder in the No, I've got you.
Okay, cool.
Okay, cool. So, what I was going to say is, Sonny, make sure that you preface that with your grandma and say, hey, you know, if you want to have this discussion and you just want to share the thing that you love, as long as I'm interested in that, that's fine. But where it gets inappropriate is when they say, no, you need to be a super fan. And
actually, she doesn't go that far. She's
good.
Really respectful of that.
Good.
Like she just wants me to try to believe. Like it's what she always goes back to. She's like, I just want you to genuinely put it in your heart, put it out there. I mean, maybe like, you know, try to pray once in a while and maybe see where it gets you.
So I might ask, you know, if I try genuinely and it doesn't get the result that you want, does that mean that I didn't try? Or do I need to try until I get the result that you want?
I think that she's expecting me to try until I get the result that she wants.
But here's the thing. If you remove the expectation, if you say, hey, if I try and it doesn't work, will you accept that I tried, or would you think that I lied to you? Because what that's going to cause is that's going to cause her to stop and think, oh my gosh, I'm putting pressure on Sonny that I did not realize I was doing. Another thing
I actually really like that.
Yeah, another thing you can do is if it does get pushy, and I understand you're saying your grandma is not that pushy, but for people who are watching who don't have your grandma, I do want people to know that when it comes to these kinds of conversations, especially these kinds of relationships, you don't necessarily need to ideologically, you know, butt up against them. You can say, hey, I really love talking to you. You're one of my favorite people in the world. But every time this conversation comes up, it becomes a problem, and it becomes an impediment to our being able to have a relationship. And so if you want to have these conversations with me, you need to understand that I need to be an equal part of that conversation. Because if you're not, if I'm not an equal part of that conversation, then you're not talking with me, you're talking at me.
Right.
And if you just share that, hey, I'm uncomfortable, hey, I'm disappointed, or something like that, especially with grandmas, you know, in those kinds of relationships, they'll often go, well, you know what? I need to find a better way of doing this, maybe a way that will work for all of us. And just reinforcing those relationships. You know, you can have these conversations without worry about hurting the relationships. You can reinforce the relationships at the same time as setting healthy boundaries.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Absolutely.
Yeah. Not as fun, but you know.
Well, I mean,
yeah, and I think she understands too. I think that she can tell that it makes me a little uncomfortable because I feel so bad for her because after you know, the last conversation that we had on the topic, she kept apologizing profusely and saying, I'm sorry, I feel like I really need to. I feel the love of God soaring through my body, and I feel like I just really need to share it with you. And I put my hands on both sides to her face and I said, that is the sweetest thing ever, that you love me so much that you're willing to you know, try to save my immortal soul that you believe in. I said, that is the sweetest thing ever, and I love you. Thanks. And then I gave her a hug, and that was the end of that one.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on, though, and I love that you brought your perspective in here, Eric. I think the options are not talk to me about it or don't talk to me about it, right? The options are let's find a way to talk about this together in a way that makes me feel like I'm part of the conversation too.
And if not, then I more often than not, Sonny, I talk to people who are in a relationship that's a lot more pushy. And more often than not, the non-believer who calls and asks, hey, what do I do? Or writes in, or whatever the case is, they say, what do I do? One of the first things they need to do is stop taking all of the weight and pressure of taking all of it on the nose and going, I don't want you to know that I'm uncomfortable when you're making me uncomfortable. They're an adult, and they should know, hey, I'm making the person I love uncomfortable. And that matters.
I think that's fair. I think that's something that I've definitely been, neglecting in myself. That it does make me uncomfortable, but I'm more worried about making her feel bad if I tell her it's uncomfortable.
But here's the thing: if she felt kind of bad for making you uncomfortable,
yeah, she did. I could tell it did make her feel bad.
That's fair. That's what humans do when they realize that they've, pushed things too far with the people that they love. But she knows why. I mean, it's not like it's not like you didn't communicate why. Those uncomfortable feelings aren't things that you should run away from. V actually has a whole lot to say about those kinds of things. That you should. The goal of an uncomfortable conversation. V, do you want to? I'm stealing all of your.
Oh no, you're good. Essentially, there's this idea that in order to have a good conversation, it has to be comfortable. And that's not necessarily true, right? Like, it's most comfortable to have comfortable conversations, but that doesn't necessarily mean that those are the best conversations to have. And a lot of the time, when one person walks away from a difficult conversation saying, wow, that was super comfortable, I feel really good about that, it's because the other person has been sitting in all of the discomfort themselves and not doing anything about it. So it's a shift. It's a mindset shift for sure. But kind of separating bad conversation from difficult or uncomfortable conversation, I think is just a good philosophy in life. And since your grandma does seem like someone who's very open to having these kinds of conversations and engaging in that, this might be a really good place to start playing around with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, and I'm definitely not going to try to shake her face because it is so important to her, and she's definitely getting up there in age, and she's at the point where she's definitely, it wouldn't be good for her to to have her face shaken at this point, I don't think. So I'm totally happy with letting her have her beliefs, and I'm not going to try to convince her otherwise. But I feel like this was a good conversation we just had, and I appreciate the the points of view that both of you brought. And V, I'm definitely exactly where you're at in that, and I'm going to take into consideration what Eric said for sure.
Perfect.
I appreciate you both taking my call and talking to me about it.
Absolutely.
And I'll see you at dawn.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Sunny. Have a lovely holiday season.
All right, you too.
Aww.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, if you are heading home for the holidays and you know that there is a person in your family who is going to want to have these kinds of conversations with you, whether they are people who you really care about and you want to have this conversation effectively and well, or maybe it's somebody who is kind of a butt and you want to have a little bit of that sparring, call in, run by us what you would want to say, and we'll test things out.
That could be fun.
Oh my gosh. All right. Eric, who do you want to take next?
Ooh, I really would. I think I want to talk to Steven in Washington.
All right, let's do it.
All right.
Steven, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hey.
How are you doing today?
Doing well. You're a little bit muffled. Can you come a little bit closer to your phone?
Thought I did. Yeah, I'm.
Okay, perfect.
I'm got it right up next to my ear. Is that better?
That's better. What can we help you with today? What's your question?
Yeah. So, I live in a very rural part of the country, and the church that I deconverted from, they're not particularly conservative, but they are very focused on prepping.
Yep.
And yeah, so I've been kind of indoctrinated into this idea that there's some kind of impending doom out there that is going to come down on all of us, and whether it takes the form of the next world war or the next economic crisis or any of that variety of thing, there's always this part of me that is just certain that's going to happen. And
Oof.
I was kind of wondering, how can I apply some skepticism here and maybe make that not the way my brain works anymore because it's kind of tiresome.
Yeah.
I feel that so deeply. I grew up in a family that was convinced that the world was going to end before I turned 18. So literally every year past the age of 18, I've been like, oh, free year. didn't think I was getting one of these. I think there are a couple different things at play here. There's definitely the religious element to it. Is your church kind of like rapture, tribulation, Armageddon kind of deal, or is it more of a political thing?
Not at all.
Okay.
Actually, it's they're actually very liberal. I was originally Episcopalian. I've called into the atheist experience a couple of times. I don't know if you guys keep up with that side of atheist YouTube or not, but
not really.
The whole thing is that like they're very liberal and it's a very kind church, very accepting of everybody. There's no real political thing about it. It's just, I feel like it's the area that we live in. We're in the Pacific Northwest, and it's a very rural part of the Pacific Northwest.
That's scary country.
It's just kind of it's just a mindset up here of people that think that the world is going to end, and it doesn't really matter if it lines up with any other beliefs that you might have. It's just kind of a certainty for everyone out here.
Interesting. Is it kind of like tied to the big one? Like this concept of the big one's coming. That was a talking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, when's the next big crash going to come? When is the season's crop going to fail so bad that we have to, it's just, there's a lot of different things that they say could be the next big one.
Yeah.
But there's just a consensus that there is something coming and you have to prepare for it.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, Stephen, and I'm probably not the correct person to talk to about this because I am generally an anxious person. So I would agree to an extent that there is always going to be something coming at some point, and the best thing to do is to take reasonable steps to prepare for whatever. There's a big freeze coming again, probably this winter in Texas. So we went ahead and I was like, we're gonna get solar chargers for our phones, and we're gonna get
bottled water
and toilet paper. We're stocking up. So like, there's a level of reasonable preparation that you can take for things. It's when it becomes crippling and something that interferes in enjoyment of other things that it's a problem. And I think honestly, for me, the best thing for that has been just going to therapy and getting that out and having somebody come back and be like, all right, here is reasonable preparation and reasonable anxiety about actual things that could happen. And then here is where it starts getting into maybe fixation or maybe just, that mindset that is so permeating this part of the world, right? So it might be very useful to just sit with somebody, a professional, and be like, hey, here's what I'm anxious about. Can you help me figure out which ones are actual things that are good to prepare for and think about, and which are probably not going to happen that I can kind of put down?
I kind of want to ask a question or two, if that's all right.
Yeah, go for it.
Steven, you still there?
Yeah, by all means.
Okay. So, Steven, the anxiety that you have around the end of the world, in quotes, that's what's in the notes. Is it different from anxiety around death as a concept? Or your own mortality?
I don't have a fear of death or anything like that. I never really have. It's more of a...
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you to elaborate.
Yeah. It's more of a... Okay, so let me give some context here. So the church that I was a part of, a lot of the people that are in it are ex-military, ex-cops, or emergency responders. So I'm already in on the, have backup water, have backup food, all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
But I'm a young dad. I've got 2 daughters, and driving force for most of my life, being in the church, has been to kind of prepare them for when I have to go out and, battle for resources or protect my land at the end of a gun, stuff like that.
Can I rephrase this in Christianese a little bit?
Absolutely.
Would you?
I speak fluent Christian.
Okay, good. Would you say that it's not fear of the rapture, but it's fear of tribulation?
Tribulation, yes.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense now. Okay.
Yeah, honestly, Stephen, I love to hear that you're thinking about this in the sense of, hey, I've got kids. How is this impacting them as well? And how is this going to impact my ability to be a good parent to them? Because that's something my dad never did. He would invite strangers into the house to take us all into the basement and teach us how to hide machine guns and guitar cases in case we needed them for some reason. So there is a level of paranoia that I have specifically because of that. So the fact that you're thinking about this and going, okay, what's reasonable to prepare my children for, and what might be influencing them negatively in a way that they don't need to be, is huge. So thank you for just doing that level of introspection.
Yeah, and there is a difference between validating a hobby and it becoming dangerous, like you were saying, P. I kind of want to tie that back around to that original point of practicing skepticism.
Yeah.
Do you kind of recognize that it's likely that there's not going to be a world-ending, catastrophic event in the next few hours? Well, you have to, because that's living your life. It's application of that. It doesn't necessarily give you a perfect answer, but what it does is it says, hey, you're going to have to live your life the best you can regardless. And so if you're spending more time upset about what might be, you're doing that at the expense of what's happening currently. And that's a really rough place to be. And I want to reiterate V's comment that cognitive behavioral therapy is going to be your best way to go, because you have a lifetime of building up these neural pathways that have reinforced this kind of thinking for your entire life. Your brain has wired itself to think like this, and CBT can help. Well,
we're not diagnosing or giving therapy advice, but in our experience.
Yeah, well, I think that's a fact, right? If you think about something long enough a certain way, you fall into that pattern of thought.
Neuroplasticity is absolutely a thing.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Stephen, what are your thoughts? We've been going back and forth between us for a little bit.
Yeah, so that's really the calculus that I'm trying to do right now, is how much of this is reasonable, where does it cross the line into almost like paranoia. And, the fact that this has essentially been the driving force of my life for the last 10 years is, it's really challenging, and trying to find something, because most of the time when I'm going through my day, when I was in college, it was, okay, what am I doing? And could I be doing something towards my degree instead? But over the last 10 years, it's been more of, what am I doing now? And could I be preparing in some way?
Yeah.
And it's that constant draw to go back into the, okay, when was the last time I checked my stockpile? When was the last time I checked the expiration dates on my food? And I catch myself doing those kinds of things, or shopping online for stuff that because this is an unreasonable belief, I clearly don't need those things.
Right.
And it's really drawing away from my family life, and it's really putting kind of a weight on my mind. And it's less of a hobby now and more of just a bad habit that I'm trying to drop. So
yeah,
really
it sounds like a compulsion.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not to the point that it's like completely disruptive to my life, which I think is where it falls into the like medical, psychological side of things. But really what I'm trying to figure out is, what are the kinds of questions that in those moments I should be asking myself, like, to kind of suss out whether or not the specific thing I'm doing right in that moment is that reasonable for everything that's going on.
Yeah, that is a good question. And I'm going to preface this by saying, I think, honestly, knowing how I felt about things like the end of the world and the big one and preparing for things, and hearing a lot of that in what you're saying, I do recommend talking to somebody about it, just because skepticism is not just an internal way of thinking. It's also making sure that you have the resources you need to live your best life, and that is one option. That said, something that I've found really helpful personally is to think about things in terms of timeline, right? Kind of building off what Eric said. If you don't think that the world is going to end in the next 5 days, then what is more important to do? To prep for something that might happen next month, or to make sure that you're ready for the next 5 days? So in those moments where you're like, okay, I could be doing this thing that will help me get ready for a presentation tomorrow, or, get Christmas presents for my family, or I could be doing this other thing that's preparing for something far out in advance that may or may not happen. A very reasonable, I think, way to look at that is to say, okay, I'm going to take care of the things that need to happen now because the timeline is shorter now. And then if I have additional time, I'll go check on those other things. But for me, that's really helped, and given like a timeline to these events and being like, all right, I'm prepping for the things that need to happen now. And when I have free time, I will prep for the stuff that might happen later.
Constructive prepping. I like it.
Yeah, just thinking about what is needed today, what is needed tomorrow, and being very honest with yourself. If you can do that and that helps, that's great. If you're still finding it difficult to move forward with preparing for this upcoming week, then that's a really good little red flag to notice about yourself, and just that you might need some additional help with that.
Yeah, and prepare to unpack. You're gonna find that there's a lot of language that you may use and a lot of patterns that are inadvertently tied to this one behavior that you're trying to change.
Yeah.
And so it's going to take time because everything needs to kind of restructure. But give yourself some patience. And was there anything else, V?
Also, maybe just, I don't know how online you are, but maybe take a little bit of a break. I know that I tend to be a lot more pessimistic about the direction of the world when I'm online constantly than when I've kind of disconnected for a little bit. And I know that can be nerve-wracking in its own way. Things are happening and I don't know what they are. But it can be helpful to be like, okay, in this moment, am I safe? Is there anyone right now trying to harm me or the people I care about? If the answer is no, then you're good for right now. You're solid, right? And that doesn't speak to what's going to happen next year, but it can feel like everything is coming at you all at once, especially with the entire world on our phone right next to our face, right? But to be able to step away from that and be like, okay, this isn't going to ruin my life today. Maybe tomorrow, but right now I'm okay, and everyone around me that I care about and that I'm protecting is okay. So yeah, Stephen, I hope that helps.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think a big source of anxiety for me right now is a lot of my family members are very, very right-wing, and on a fairly regular basis, I'll find a Breitbart or the Blaze links in my emails.
Oh gosh, yeah, delete those. Just get rid of them.
I think I'll take a break from paying attention to that. Maybe kind of reassess a little bit. The therapy thing might be a little bit tougher these days, but I think your suggestions is a good starting place. So I really appreciate it.
Well, good luck, and thank you for calling in.
Yeah, thank you.
Take care. Stephen was nice.
Stephen is nice, and I feel that so deeply. There are so many things to be legitimately anxious about right now that last year, 2 years ago, we wouldn't have even thought were things. So, like, absolutely, I get it. But you were spot on. Is this something I need to worry about right now? Is this something that is going to hurt me today? If so, absolutely, go for it. And if you've done some preparation, then you're all that more prepared. But
that preparation's supposed to help you relieve that anxiety.
That's a really good point. If you have prepared for something and it has not alleviated the anxiety, but rather made you feel like you need to prepare even more, that's a good sign that it might not be actually concerned about that event, but rather just a broader worldview like Stephen was talking about. Yeah, really, really good.
All right, who are we talking to next?
I'm curious what Xander has to say about free will. Let's bring this back around.
Another free will. Okay, let's talk to Xander.
Xander, welcome to the show. Can you hear us?
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, sorry if you're tired of talking about free will, but
no.
Already, but
go for it.
Yeah, because this topic comes up a lot, and I hear people discussing it, and I'm kind of always thinking, I'm not sure what the difference, or if there is a meaningful difference between the illusion of free will that people talk about, like, oh, we don't actually have free will, we just have an illusion of free will. If there's a meaningful difference between the illusion of free will and actual free will.
Interesting. I like where you're going. And I think this is where Eric and I usually diverge, because I'm much more of a pragmatist, so I would in general be a lot more on your side in terms of, hey, if we all are convinced this is a thing and there's no real falsifiable way to determine whether or not it is, then how is that different from it actually being true? And on one level, I agree with you. But I do think there's a practical, fundamentally important difference there. And that is the way we have structured society and the way we have made concepts like morality, like retribution, like our entire legal system is based on free will. And this idea that people who do something that is not within the scope of, appropriate social action are choosing to do that and should be punished for it in order to convince them not to do it again. And that makes sense if free will is true, but if it's an illusion, then that's a problem, because we are all of a sudden, yeah.
Sorry, I just feel, I get where you're going, but I feel like it doesn't actually make a difference in that instance, because if we're all just, say, organic computers that do nothing but just compute inputs and produce an output, then the negative outcomes of doing that criminal act of, oh, I might go to jail or I might get fined or whatever, that becomes an input to the calculation that then may change the outcome. So I don't think that if we all said, oh, we don't have free will, then I don't think that would change our legal system, because we would still have to encourage good behavior and discourage bad behavior.
Interesting. So I guess
there are tons of ways that we could be doing our legal system better now, but yeah.
Right. That's an interesting counter. I think that depends on your version of free will versus maybe the one I assumed when you called in. How do you define free will? Because usually the conversation falls into, can you decide to do things, or can you not decide to do things, to simplify it beyond any usefulness, really. How do you define free will in this case?
Yeah. Well, I guess when I hear, or if I give a quick example of the whole chocolate and vanilla thing. Mm-hmm. If you offer me chocolate and vanilla, and for a moment it's like, I don't know which I'm going to choose in that circumstance. Mm-hmm. And there's no one else can determine what I'm going to choose. Mm-hmm. And then I'm put in that situation, and I eventually choose one. Mm-hmm. I feel like, that unless there was a way to definitively say this is what's going to be chosen, and we know that completely 100%, then I'm not sure what other. I guess that's part of the reason I'm part of the conversation, because I don't see how that isn't free will.
Got it.
So if it's, yeah, shall we say, the only way I feel like we don't have free will is in a purely deterministic universe, And even without human beings being around, even without consciousness existing, I still don't think we're living in a deterministic universe.
So
interesting.
As someone who mostly agrees with you, Xander, I kind of want to visit something that you said just now, because I think that I think we could sharpen up a piece of what you just said. So you were saying if we don't have 100% definitive knowledge of what's going to happen next, it sounds like that's leaving room for free will. Am I not understanding that correctly? Because that's kind of what I got from that.
I mean, I think that's a good summation.
Okay, so let me try this. Do you think that we could get the knowledge, in theory, that if we were to understand everything about anatomy, everything about neurology and physiology, and we were to isolate all of the different pieces around what is going to influence your decision, do you think that we could predict what the decision would be, or do you think it would still be not determinable?
So I would say that I think fundamentally it's not deterministic. So
determinable and deterministic are a little bit different. One is just this example. Could we determine whether you were going to choose chocolate or vanilla? Deterministic, it has, at least in my understanding of it, a lot more to do with, the physics of the universe impacting things such that our lives are just dominoes that have been tipping over since the beginning of the universe. So before we get to deterministic, let's look at determinable, because I think that I can make a really good argument for things being determinable. I think that the only difference between us being, the only difference right now is a lack of knowledge. But I imagine that we can get to a place eventually where sufficient understanding and sufficient knowledge could bridge that gap. If we are just meat robots, and Xander, do you think that we're meat robots? Because I do. I don't. V, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, in general.
Okay, so if we're meat robots, then we're kind of left to the fact that we are just responding to the stimuli. We just don't have the knowledge of exactly what is influencing those responses. But if we did have that knowledge, would that view of free will just kind of go up in smoke?
If you were able to, create a copy of my brain, my consciousness, say in a computer, and have it be a perfect imitation, and run it on fast forward to see what I'm going to decide. If that's possible, then I guess then there is that's a problem for free will.
Well, and I think that we're needing to differentiate between specific kinds of free will. So you're specifically talking about a personal free will, right? Or are you talking about a societal free will or something like the last caller? Maybe we're just not on the same page with free will.
Well, I think there actually is a larger conversation to be had here, which is, Xander, I agree with you that right now, with the information that we have, there is no real meaningful difference between actually having free will and believing that we have free will, because we have, as a society across the world mostly, decided that free will is a thing on some level. And so if everybody is going to agree with that, then it kind of doesn't matter if it's true or not, because that's just kind of the environment that we live in. It's kind of like, capitalism, right? We've agreed that capitalism is a thing, whether or not it is somehow idealistically existent or true. It's a concept that we have collectively decided is how we run things for right now. But my point here is that there's a difference between saying we cannot know whether or not we have free will, therefore we should just believe we have free will, and we can't know whether or not we have free will, so what next? right? And so I think the big concern that I have is right now, the free will question feels very much to me like the God question. There is not sufficient evidence to have me say 100% God does not exist, there is no God, never has been, ever, ever. And there's not enough evidence for me to say there is a God, right? And so I'm in this space where I'm not making a decision. And to structure a society with one or the other being the absolute truth, regardless of whether or not it's falsifiable, is where skepticism might have a problem. Now, the fundamental day-to-day of being undecided about whether or not I have free will is a puzzle I haven't figured out yet. How do I function in that universe? But theoretically, the response to your question would be, I agree, there is no difference right now because it's unfalsifiable, but that doesn't mean that we should then wholeheartedly buy into one option or the other.
I kind of want to push back, but I want Xander to get the opportunity to respond.
Xander, what are your thoughts?
Well, when you're talking about, I don't know if we should structure society as if there's one option or the other, I'm kind of in the boat of there's no difference between one option or the other.
Right.
Like, how would it be possible to structure society differently if we all agreed that there wasn't free will? I think we would be structuring society in pretty much the exact same way.
I think there would be mostly the same. Mostly it would be similar.
I think that's why it comes back to the question. I'm always curious about this, the question whenever the topic comes up, because I don't see how there is any, I don't see any difference really at all between the illusion of free will and free will, because I guess you could say in general, I would argue that a perfect illusion of a thing, such that it is indistinguishable from the real thing, is the real thing.
Right.
It's no longer an illusion.
And philosophically, I think that that's a fascinating route to go down, but I think that there is a fundamental difference there. Mostly we would be the same. We would still ask, do you want chocolate ice cream or vanilla ice cream, right? Well, that would still be a question whether or not we believed that free will was accurate in this way that we perceive it. But if you chose chocolate and chocolate was the wrong answer, how we perceive free will would impact how we responded to that choice, right? And so instead of saying, how dare you choose chocolate? You have been exiled, get out. It would now be, okay, well, you chose chocolate. What made you choose chocolate? Can we adjust or can we accommodate? Or how does this work now that you have chosen this thing? As opposed to, how dare you, here is retribution for that choice. So I think there would be fundamental differences in society, not to the point where it would crumble everything, but to the point where it would probably allow us to be a little bit more empathetic.
I feel like we're having 3 conversations right now.
Oh, absolutely. We're all over the place.
Yeah, I'm trying. I've been wanting to try and cut into to kind of line this out a little bit better. We're having the conversation of is, what ought, and how we came to it. We are bouncing between ontology, axiology, and epistemology, and using them to justify each other in really not great ways. And I'm really, really having trouble with it. It's caused me to get really frustrated. So I think the first, Xander, you're not making an ontological claim. You're not making a claim about whether or not free will exists. You're talking about whether or not we all buy into the story. No matter what the story is, it's not about whether or not it's true. It's about whether or not buying into it would change things, right?
Sort of. I would, clarify. It's. Yeah, I guess I just.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out a different way to say it. But like for instance, Sam Harris says, "Oh, we don't have free will. We just have an illusion of free will," and I would kind of push back against him and say, there is no difference between the illusion of free will and free will. And so that means we have free will in that way. Or if you want to say, oh, no, we don't have free will, and then we just have the illusion of free will, then it kind of comes more down to semantics.
Well, I think that the ought is going to come in here now, because we're looking at this problem and now we're deciding how we should treat it. And I think that we ought to anytime we come across an unfalsifiable claim, put it on the I don't know shelf. And if saying it's indistinguishable is putting it on the I don't know shelf for you, totally got you. But if it is an unfalsifiable claim and you're making a positive statement off of something that's unfalsifiable, you're opening yourself up to a line of thinking that can be really damaging in other places in your life. It's not damaging here, but I'm trying to point out a tool that might be a little warped. Xander?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll think on that. I'm not.
Yeah, it's just, you know, if you're appealing to something that's not falsifiable and you're taking away a positive assertion from it, that should set off a red flag. I'm not saying that it's wrong, but I'm saying that the reasoning that you're giving could be sharpened up.
Or maybe there's, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm just wondering, because Xander, the way that you phrased it in your response to this thing that Sam Harris said kind of clarified things, I think, a little bit for me and where you're coming from. Are you saying that we do not have a choice but to have the illusion of free will, like it's an inevitability?
If you're saying that we only...
Like when
I'm not
Sam...
100% sure about...
Yeah, when Sam Harris says we don't have free will, we have the illusion of free will, is the interpretation there for you, we don't have free will, but we have this inherent illusion that cannot be changed of free will? And you're saying those two are the same thing? Because that I would agree with you. I think I am implicitly thinking that the illusion can be broken, and therefore we should, axiologically, change the way that we view it. But if you're saying that the belief is that we have an illusion and we don't have a choice but to have that illusion, then I agree with you.
Yeah, okay, so I like that better. So that way of saying things better. Yeah, I don't think it's about a belief in whether or not we have free will. It's just about the appearance.
Got
and
it.
I don't think it's possible for the world to present itself to us in such a way that we obviously don't have free will.
Got it. Okay.
So in that way, the illusion can't be broken. At least that's what I would think.
Got it. Okay, that actually is a much more concise claim that I think we could actually dive into if we had the time. But unfortunately,
yeah,
we're going to need to move on. But Xander, this was actually a really interesting conversation. We did go all over the place. We kind of talked about all the possibilities all at once, which is probably why it was a little confusing, so apologies there. But I would love to dive into that specific claim a little bit more if you would like to call back in another episode where we can talk about, is it possible for us to break that illusion or not? Because I think it is. But that's a conversation for another time. Thank you for calling in.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Bye.
Sorry, I'm sitting there and
you've been emoting.
Yeah, well, I was wanting to bring up a thing. I was wanting to say, okay, it sounds like we're moving a little bit, but I won't.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm curious what the comment section under this is going to be like, because I want to know, because it feels like the free will question strikes at the same chord as like the soul question or the God question in people, myself included, where it's such a fundamental belief that has the same level of proof, quote unquote, as things like the soul or God, that is really uncomfortable when it's challenged. And I don't know, I like poking at those things.
I do too. When I start expanding out those free will conversations to include not ontological statements like how should society be and what would society do if this was the case, completely disregards whether or not it's true, because you're now talking about the way society would interact with it, and whether or not it was true is just the thought experiment at that point. But when it crosses that space, that's when I get confused and I wind up just shutting down, because I'm like, I no longer, if we're talking about whether or not this is true or whether or not it would be a better world if society acted this way, and I kind of They're
Interesting.
just entirely different conversations for me.
Because to me, it feels like you use that reasoning when we talk about things like qualia. Because you're like, whether or not it's true, I don't think we should have that conversation because it opens us up to this ought.
Yes, absolutely. And I try and prevent that in this too. I'm being consistent, right?
No.
No, I'm being inconsistent?
Yes, you are. But we
Okay,
can
we're
discuss
gonna have
that
to
on the
have
live
this
stream.
argument.
Yeah. All right. We've got time for probably one more call. Thank you, everybody who's been on the line. I'm sorry if we didn't get to you in time. We are going to have an after show. So if you would like to join us in Discord afterwards, we're going to hang out there for a little bit. Discord is what, tiny.cc/SG Discord. Make sure the S and the G are capitalized because that matters.
It's scrolling in the lower third, and there's a link in the description.
Good. Perfect. All right. So let's talk to Mr. Cosmic from Bangladesh because I'm super curious about this.
Okay, sounds good. I've got Mr. Cosmic queued up.
Awesome. Mr. Cosmic, thank you for joining the show today.
Thank you, guys. Eric, I'm a huge fan of you.
Aw, yay.
I love approach, and it's very appealing to me.
Thank you. I'm glad you watched. That's awesome. Well,
And you know what? I 2 years ago I've started a show in my country.
Oh yeah.
Which airs on YouTube and Facebook.
Nice.
And it is inspired by you guys. Actually, I was a huge fan of you guys when you talked in the talk event, and man, it's an honor to talk with you guys.
Aw.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yay.
calling in. That's really good to hear.
Yeah.
You have what seems to be a really interesting question here. Can you give a brief summary and then we can dive in?
Sure, why not? So let's dissect the thing actually. Do you know, guys, what Mumin means?
Moomin? No.
Okay, Mumin is, in simplest term, Mumin is a subset of Muslims.
Okay.
Okay, and Mumins are those who follows absolute theology of Islam, all deeds of Prophet Muhammad, and what is written in Quran and Hadith. This is basically what Mumin means. And people usually, in my country actually, people usually tag themselves as Mumin. So there are huge number of people who identify themselves as Mumin, and they're law-abiding good people. But in theoretical sense, when I analyze the definition in Islamic theology, it is Islamic theology is very barbaric. Islamic theology is very barbaric, and it's very inhuman religion actually. And I'm an ex-Muslim, by the way. So many atheist platforms, though they say that all Mu'mins are terrorist or potential terrorist, and I highly disagree with this thing because I highly disagree with this. And when I pointed out there are lots of good people who identify themselves as Mu'min. They say they are not the true Mu'min, and here is the no true Scotsman come.
Yeah.
And I think it's a fallacy. And when I pointed out that this is a fallacy, their usual response is, no, this is not the no true Scotsman fallacy, as the no true Scotsman will happen when it is consistent with the definition. And my response is, it have to be the consistent with the reality. So what do you guys think? I'm really confused about this thing.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting kind of definitional dichotomy in the No True Scotsman. Some say it's not a No True Scotsman if it is definitionally consistent. And you're saying that it's a No True Scotsman if it's inconsistent with the reality. And that's fascinating because they are different things. Yeah. I think that we come to, from what you've described, Mr. Cosmic, the equivalent to a Christian culture would be maybe saying a born again Christian, right? Someone who describes themselves not just as a Christian, but as somebody who has truly been saved and is 100% faithful to the Bible. Would that be kind of like a comparison that sounds accurate?
Close, but not too close, actually.
Okay.
Can I take a stab?
Yeah, sure, man.
Sure. I think it, and to tell me if I'm wrong, but this is kind of consistent in just the way humans behave. It kind of gets to the core of why No True Scotsman is useful, right? It helps people gatekeep unwanted people out of their tribe. And so when a Christian or a Muslim or, some other individual in a group does something terrible, the tribe will say, that's not one of us. That's not representative of our group. They were never one of us, or that's, and they can be, clean of guilt. The problem here is you can't convince them otherwise. Not really. When it comes to the No True Scotsman fallacy, you can't prevent someone from gatekeeping their own tribe like that.
Well, I don't think he's talking about them gatekeeping their own tribe. This is external people claiming that this entire group are terrorists.
Okay.
Which
well,
is,
that's a whole lot more cut and dry.
Yeah.
That's a whole lot more cut and dry. That's bullshit.
My response is this is actually my response as well. This is very harmful, I think.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
very harmful. You are identifying a particular group as a terrorist.
Yeah.
In my definition, terrorism you can only call anyone terrorist when they act like terrorists, right?
Ooh.
So,
okay, hold on a second. Hold on.
okay.
It feels like is there a difference to you when it comes to an endorsement of terrorism and the act of terrorism?
Can you simplify this?
Sure,
more?
absolutely. If I have a group of people and I tell them all that they should commit this horrible act of violence, and only 5 people do, are we talking about the fact that I told them they should do it, or are we only judging the people who go out and do it?
Both.
Both. Okay, it seems like we should treat them separately, because the people who don't do it just have a better morality than the horrible thing that was espoused to them, right?
Wait, I'm very confused.
Sure, V, if I told you should go...
I'm too, man.
Yeah,
I'm too.
sure. So V, no, hold on. If I told you should burn down the neighbor's house, and you
Right.
don't,
Right.
that says a lot about you, but
Right.
it also says a lot about me for telling you to do that.
Right.
And so drawing the line there means that we're...
No, I think that
go ahead.
the way that you phrased that was, would you call the person telling me to burn down the building and the person who went and burned down the building both terrorists? And I would say yes.
Okay. So do you think, Mr. Cosmic, do you think that the Moomin religious ideology is a terrorist ideology? Not whether or not people act on it.
In theoretical sense, yes.
Okay.
But the thing is, the theoretical sense doesn't apply on the reality.
Right.
That's
And
the main
that's,
issue.
yeah, that's where we come against the reality, which is that an individual is not a definition. And you
Yeah,
cannot point
yes.
to a person and say, well, this is the definition of you, therefore that's all you are. If a person
Yes.
has a worldview that you disagree with, talk about that worldview, figure out why they've aligned themselves with that worldview, especially if it seems inconsistent with their moral character. But I agree. I think that on a technical level, if you grant that a definition meets the criteria, it would be a No True Scotsman, but it is also a No True Scotsman in that reality sense, where you're saying, hey, you are applying a broad label to an entire group of people because you think that everything there is reduced to a single element. And that's not how reality works. And it's not helpful, it's harmful. So yeah,
Yes.
I think you're spot on there. It is a No True Scotsman in the most basic sense, which is you are simplifying something to the point of harm, and you're not allowing anything to exist outside of that. And unfortunately, or fortunately in this case, reality is not that one definition. And if you're ignoring that, then
Reality
that's a
is very
fallacy.
complex.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think you're spot on. It is bullshit. It is. You can't point to a person and say, because of X thing, this one thing that I'm deciding to look at, you are this thing, right? That's not how anything works, and that is ultimately the foundation of most of the problems in the world in general. Is I'm going to decide that this group is this thing, and anything that is an outlier, anything that doesn't fit my narrative, I'm going to ignore or say it's not really that thing. And that's the definition of no true Scotsman.
Yeah, I think I was approaching this from the opposite side of a group policing themselves, not an outsider policing the group.
Right, and that's a different application of the same fallacy for sure. But yeah, as an outsider, the best thing to do, just in general, everyone, is to not make claims about an entire group of people. Like, that's just in general not a good practice.
Yeah, now you can make claims about a specific ideology because you can steel man it. You can say, here's what it says, here's why it's a problem, and here's where the issue is. But if you bring it directly to people, you're reducing them to, it's just not helpful.
Right, exactly. You can talk about the ideology all you want, right? You could set it up and just go at it. And I would encourage people to do that. But when you reduce a group of people to a definition and then say that anyone who doesn't meet that definition is by definition not that thing, sure, but you're not applying reality and the actual situation to that. And that's the whole point. That's the whole point of fallacies, and wanting to point those out is because we want to make sure that we're not just in it to win arguments. That's a fallacy, I win. The goal is to make sure that we are accurately representing reality to the best of our ability. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, Mr. Cosmic, does that help?
Yeah, that helped really, really a lot. Let me simplify it a little more. It have to be consistent with the reality, not the definition, right?
In this circumstance, yeah, I think so.
I think
is that
well,
what
the goal. Well, that's I think that's the goal. The goal is to make sure that the definition fits reality. If you're defining something and it's not reality, then the definition needs to change.
Okay, I'm way off base. I'm way off base. I thought, Mr. Cosmic, I thought you were saying that there's a difference between the definition and reality, and we're judging it over from one versus the other.
Well, yeah.
No, I'm V or something. Something
sorry. I think we were both waiting for the other person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the question here is, are we calling something a no true Scotsman when the definition is the thing in conflict, or when it's in conflict with reality? And I think the important thing to draw attention to is when it is in conflict with reality. I think there are always going to be people who say, well, definitionally, it's not a no true Scotsman, therefore I win, and it's not a fallacy. But then we have the conversation, okay, well, that definition doesn't match the reality. So now we have to talk about the definition, right? If you're going to grant that, yes, really, actually, in the real world, I'm making a fallacious claim, but technically it's not fallacious, then the argument becomes, okay, well, why is there that discrepancy in the first place, and how are you using this definition in a way that is inconsistent with reality and still thinking you're winning somehow? So
that was very helpful, man.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad you called in. Hey, we're going to go over to the Discord. If you would like, share a link to your show on YouTube in the Discord afterwards, and people can go check it out. I think it would be really interesting to take a look at.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, but it is in my language, Bengali.
Good.
I don't think that will be helpful, but I'll do it.
Well,
absolutely,
that
please do.
means that anybody who speaks that or knows someone who speaks that can send that as a link, as a resource.
Yeah. We always need more of these shows in the original languages that they're... Yeah, it's so good. So good. Thank you so much for calling in, Mr. Cosmic.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.
It was nice.
Yeah, I'm really excited that these kinds of shows are picking up all over the place.
Me too. It feels weirdly imperialistic to only to force people to watch this kind of show in English when they don't speak English.
Yeah.
Having that resources. Wonderful.
That's really, really cool.
All right. Are we ready to talk about let's actually go into the super chats. Tom, thank you so much for waiting in the queue. We're so sorry that we couldn't get to you. We'll try and get to you next week.
Yeah, or join us in the Discord. We'll be there for a while after this.
Absolutely.
All right. Nate sent us $1.99. Thank you. It says, keep up the great work, Eric and V.
Yay. Apex Sinster sent $12 and says, I got a new job. Here's to me finally having some cash in my pockets. Cheers.
Oh,
Thank
cheers.
you for sharing it.
Aladine sent us 20
DKK.
We need to like have like a lightning round with flashcards to learn all of these because I feel stupid every time. Merry Yule and Solstice to all. Thank you.
Yay. Yanes Bali sent 5. Is that Canadian?
Yep.
Ha! So I just popped in to say hi live. I usually listen to the podcast version while I'm driving my semi.
Nice.
Thanks for what you do.
Yay.
Thank you for watching.
Keep you company on the road.
Yeah.
I always wanted to be a semi driver. I think that would be so fun.
Oh God, I can see that.
Can't you?
Yeah, like a trucker hat. Breaker.
I think it would be the most relaxing thing. I might be completely wrong, but to me that feels like it would be relaxing.
You would get bored so quick. Zach B. Oh, no, that's you. Sorry.
Zach B, $10. Thank you, Zach. Thank you for another week. The question I've been thinking about is, can someone truly be a skeptic and agnostic theist? People in my life call themselves both, and I can't understand how.
I feel like Gnosticism butts up against skepticism, period.
I think skepticism kind of has agnosticism baked in, at least the way we use it. I don't know if that's true across the board, but I think even somebody who says they're a skeptic and agnostic atheist would have some splaining to do.
Agreed. Simply Haven shot us $50. Yay!
Thank you.
Says, just letting you know that you're helping one old lady learn the vocabulary. She says she's thanking us for helping her learn vocabulary, and I just mispronounced vocabulary. I feel silly. Let me try that again. Just letting you know that you're helping one old lady learn the vocabulary of philosophy and logical thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Simply Haven. That's very, very generous. And finally, Insomnia Doodles, $5. The free will topic is a fun accompaniment to this game of Sims I'm playing while listening.
Nice.
That's funny.
People are saying that it's Kroner. Danish Kroner.
Oh, Kroner.
Yay.
Okay, I'm going to have to start writing these down, you guys. Thank you, everybody. We are going to pop over to the Discord after this. Happy holidays. If you celebrate, Merry Christmas. And we'll see you the next weekend live right here. So
happy holidays.
Happy holidays.